Good morning and welcome to the Fusionary Health podcast. So on this podcast, I love to share about Ayurvedic wisdom, about the health and wellness innovators who exist, the incredible practitioners who are out there who are taking care of us in our daily lives. And I love pulling from both Eastern and Western medicine, so we get all the different perspectives of how we can approach our health and optimize our health in completely new ways. So today I'm going to be diving into a topic called inflammation. And my goal is to break it down into a way that we can all really resonate with it, understand what it is, how it works, and how we can really support our bodies to fight inflammation and win at the battle called inflammation. So first, let me start with some background. I grew up in a family where my mom was suffering from gestational diabetes with my sister. And after she had my sister, she was insulin dependent. So I watched growing up, my mom always had to stick herself with needles 3 times a day. She was always trying to manage her blood sugar. She'd have blood sugar crashes. And I always saw this and was like, that's not very good. Like, what does this mean for your longevity, for your health? Why does my mom have to struggle with her health so much? I remember my dad always going with my mom to endocrinologists and nutritionists and dietitians and trying to win at this big thing called diabetes. And I simultaneously grew up in an Indian household, an immigrant family, where every year my grandparents were either visiting from India and living with us, or we were going to India to be with them and all my parents' brothers and sisters and their kids. And so I lived in these worlds where in the US, my house always smelled like curry, like most immigrant families, and we were eating Indian food, and I'd take my Indian food to lunch the next day, which is kind of stinky, so I'd be that different, nerdy Indian kid. But I also remember every other year we'd be flying into India and living there. I'd live in my mom's house. I'd live in my dad's house. And every time I had a problem or a sickness, my grandma would reach for the spice cabinet. And she would take hing and gala namak and turmeric and these different spices, and she would heal me using those spices. And I always thought, wow, this is so different. Like in the US, we approach this differently. Here you approach this differently. Okay. Like, it was just the way my life was, so I didn't think it was that weird until I was at school and saw other people had really different lives. And so fast forward, I remember my father sitting my sister and I down, and I remember we were sneaking into the pantry, and it was elementary school. We still lived in Clear Lake, which is a suburb of Houston, and we were like sneaking into the cabinet, pulling out Oreos and snacks and junk food like all kids do. And my dad just stopped us in the kitchen, and he goes, "You will be diabetic if that's how you behave. You will have the disease your mom has. You will stick a needle in yourself 3 times a day. This is your genetics. Look around." And I thought to myself, all my grandparents were diabetic. All my parents' brothers and sisters were diabetic. And my mom was diabetic. And I was like, oh, like this is my future path. This is my genes. This is my family history. And it really got me on the path of thinking like, wow, I have control over my health. I have sovereignty over my health. What is diabetes? Why is it ravaging my family? Why is it that every time I go to India, someone's really struggling with their diabetes, heart disease, stroke, Parkinson's? Like, there was a lot of disease that we were flying into India to manage or flying them here to manage. And that was kind of my upbringing. And my dad looked at us and he's like, you may not eat white bread. You may not drink whole milk. You may not eat sugar. The 3 main causes of diabetes are sugar, stress, and inflammation. And that was such a powerful moment for me. I was like, what's inflammation? I don't understand. And it set me on this path, even though I was just doing my studies and I was interested in business because my parents were in business. It really set me on this path of saying, okay, well, what is this? And why is it that this is my future? And what does that have to do with me studying and trying to be a good person and a successful person? So it just really opened up a whole can of worms, a lot of questions. And I eventually came to understand that in my body, I've always had one of these immune systems that wasn't very strong. And my goal was to understand, well, how do I build a stronger system? How can I be healthier? And eventually by college, I studied Ayurveda. I started studying health and wellness and Ayurveda because I needed to understand how to fix my own body. And so let's dive into the topic of inflammation because it took me a really long time to come to understand it. I ended up studying Ayurveda. I formalized my studies by doing my master's in Ayurvedic sciences. I did my PhD on turmeric. It took me till the end of my turmeric PhD to finally understand what all the turmeric supplements out there are saying, because a lot of them are totally BSing us. And then it also took me a really long time to understand inflammation in a way that I could operationalize and create an action plan behind. So let's dive into inflammation. There's two types of inflammation, acute and chronic. Acute inflammation just means that when we hurt ourselves, our body's going to release an inflammatory response. It's going to send out inflammatory markers to go scavenge around and say, hey, she hurt her elbow at the gym today. What's going on there? Do we need to mount an entire battle against it? Do we need to just send some healing resources there? What's the game plan? And so inflammation is there for a good purpose. It's there to help us. The problem is after an acute inflammatory response, sometimes our body's like not in the right, healthiest state, and we don't end that inflammatory response right there. It keeps going. So it's kind of like, let's say we thought that there was an attack in some part of the city and we sent resources there. Okay, that's reasonable. We should send police, we should send fire trucks, we should send things to respond. But then what if all of a sudden that area of town was so sick and unwell and had these ongoing problems, so we had to leave those resources there and they ongoing had to keep like battling it out for a year? Highly unusual. I don't see that happening in our country here in the US. But that's kind of like how inflammation works. It doesn't have the support it needs to just end the problem right there. And so it's going to continue dealing with it, circling around it, trying to understand how to fix the problem. And what this can also lead to is a spread of inflammation throughout the body, which we call chronic, low-grade, persistent inflammation. And so I have all my own theories around it, which I'll add in, but think about chronic, low-grade, persistent inflammation as this low-grade fire, this response in the body that's causing damage wherever it is and not allowing us to just be healthy and whole and healed. Because the immune system's activated, the body's activated, it's on high alert. And so it's always looking for problems, oftentimes running into itself and creating almost like an autoimmune response because it's already so activated and overactivated. So I was trying to think of some analogies for you. One I thought of is our pool, because I don't know if you have a pool, but sometimes with my pool, something will go wrong and all of a sudden the whole pool will turn green. And the pool guy's like, what'd you do? And I'm like, I have no idea what we did. Something went wrong. And he has to shock it with chemicals, shut down that green stuff that formed, and get the pool balanced back to normal. So a lot of times when we have acute inflammation, a doctor will use a solution like steroids, like ibuprofen, NSAIDs, to quickly bring down the inflammatory response in the system, shut it down so the body can go back into its normal state. Another good example is your car. I don't know if you have a bad habit. I love cars and I love car analogies. I happen to be a secret race car driver on the inside, which most people don't know about me. But for example, I love the car I drive, and a lot of times I'll forget to get an oil change because I don't want to get an oil change. I don't want to go there. I don't want to wait. I don't want to give up my car for 2-3 days to them for this job. I hate all the aspects of it. But now I think to myself, and I'm like, well, you're causing sludge. You're causing this residue backup to potentially be accumulating in this car that you love, this thing that you rely on. I rely on my car. I drive thousands of miles per month. I'm a very heavy user of my vehicle because of the nature of my work. And if I am going to consistently damage it in that way by not paying attention to it, then who's really suffering? Me. So in the same way, if we're allowing ourselves to create this sludge kind of system, this film or this clogging of our arteries and clogging of our cells that's going to damage ourselves in the long run, then who are we really harming but ourselves? And that's what chronic inflammation is. Now, you might be thinking, well, what causes inflammation? I'm sure she's going to say bad food and processed food, and then I'm going to have to give up all the fun foods. And that is partially true. What causes inflammation? Environmental toxins, poor air, poor water, the phthalates, BPAs, and all the chemicals that exist in our skincare ingredients and in our skincare products, in our cleaning products. So just by the nature of living and touching surfaces and breathing air in commercial spaces or our own homes, we are potentially causing inflammation. Why? Because it's an external factor that is causing a response to our body, a response from our body. So for example, let's say my housekeeper sprayed Clorox in the house, for example, and my body's like, that's toxic, that's bad. My body's response might be inflammation. If I already have chronic low-grade persistent inflammation in my system, if my system's already activated and on high alert, it might be like, that's poison too, that's bad, we're gonna respond to that. And then your lungs or whatever part of you will respond. Skincare. We know that skincare, and I'm not the best at using organic and clean skincare, skincare alone can have hundreds of chemicals in it. You're putting a cream on, a perfume on, a shampoo on, a conditioner, a body wash. Just imagine like the total number of chemicals that we stack onto our hair, onto our skin, onto our nails on a given basis. That alone can cause our body to have a negative reaction, which could be inflammation. So environmental toxins is one, bacteria and viruses is another, smoking is another, alcohol is another. I have a whole pie chart in one of my PowerPoints, so that's why I'm thinking through it in a circle. There's so many different things, foods, grilling foods, they say, red meat, fried foods, trans fats, any of the oils, a lot of vegetable oils like canola oil and vegetable oil are very inflammatory to our system. Trans fats, of course, processed foods that have these types of ingredients. Processed foods also have a lot of chemicals in them. So one argument that a lot of people in the health and wellness world make is GMOs, like genetically modified foods are a culprit in creating inflammation in us because they're so foreign to the body. So really take a step back and just think about your body as this system that came from Earth. We're going to go back into the Earth when we go. We have a potential 100-ish year lifespan ahead of us. And this body is our temple. It's this vehicle that we've been given for this lifetime. But instead of honoring it and loving it and living on farms with this organic, idyllic life off the grid without our cell phones damaging our systems, without our city lights ruining our sleep, without our foods full of chemicals, what if we honored our bodies and lived our healthiest? Well, then we could have longevity. You know, we talk about the blue zones. Well, the blue zones are full of, living in the Mediterranean and eating the freshest food and being in community and staying active. And I get that that is not practical in our daily lives. I am constantly looking for the superfoods and the biohacking tools and what are the things that are going to help me shortcut getting the response that I want and the results that I want and the health that I want. Because we do live in modern day society. We do live in these big cities. We do live in, amongst society with whatever modern day conveniences that means, whether it means the cleaning products, the skincare products, the air quality, the water quality, the food quality, all those things that are stacking up against us in a way. And so my goal is to show us, okay, there are all these causes of inflammation, but what are the key things that we must do to significantly reduce inflammation in the body and thus create an ecosystem that is happy and healthy and vibrant so that when a few little things like, cleaning products that you might touch or whatever come at you, or you eat out and eat certain foods and consume some alcohol, your body's like, all right, I can process that. I can digest that. I'm fine with that. It's okay. I got that. But I truly do believe it takes building a foundation of great health to have the tolerance for what modern day society is throwing at us. But without the foundation in place, we're unprotected. We're just in a state of chaos. Our body is already waging a war on the inside, and then we're throwing more fuel on that fire. And so that's why I wanted to dive into this topic called inflammation, because most people don't realize inflammation is the root cause of most metabolic diseases. Inflammation is causing our obesity and visceral fat. Once we have that obesity and visceral fat, then we're going out there, it is the cause of and the precursor to like the clogging of our arteries, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, so many of the metabolic diseases. And so here we are living in society and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got cancer. I can't believe I got diabetes. I can't believe my husband, my wife, my this, my that, my parents got X disease. And I'm like, we all had chronic, low-grade, persistent inflammation for decades. That's why now in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, we're seeing this horrible level of diagnoses coming through. Our symptoms weren't loud enough, early on enough to tell us that it was important to make that switch or make that change. One advisor during my PhD, he's in Houston, he gave me this example. He said, look, in your young years, you eat whatever you want. You're fine. You have the metabolism for it. My kids, they love candy, cookies, brownies, everything. They want to try everything horrible on earth, and I have to battle with them for it. Then we hit our 20s, and all of a sudden we have certain stressors that hit us. Studies, exams, our first love, our first breakups, just those experiences. And we pull all-nighters in school, horrible food habits in college, all those things that we can finally do. And that's when we switch on the light switches of inflammation in our body. We switch them on. We've turned them on. Now, in Ayurveda, which is the system of medicine that I teach, we teach that it's so important to do a complete annual detox, like a profound 21-day detox that will turn off those light switches of inflammation, but also allow the body to heal at all levels, at the cellular level, our gut, our brain, everything. Now, when it comes to most of us who don't know about Ayurveda, I myself didn't know about it till my 20s, we don't usually do that level of detox. We certainly don't do it annually. So we switched on the light switches. We go through our 30s. In our 30s, we start to slow down a little. We're like, oh, I get fatigued. Oh, I can't lift the same way. Oh, I'm eating foods and they're really not suiting me. The level of people who have IBS who say, I can't eat those foods. For some reason, I'm bloated all the time. For some reason, my stomach's upset all the time. People reach out to me and say, I have ulcerative colitis. I have Crohn's disease. All these kinds of things start cropping up in the 30s. Then you hit your 40s. That's where me and my friends are. Everyone's like, I've got perimenopause. I've got this weight gain. I can't get rid of the weight gain. My blood work's not good. My cholesterol's high. I'm so tired. I wake up and I'm sore. My sleep is off. So a lot of those complaints start in our 40s. Then you move into the 50s. Whole different set of rules, whole different set of experiences. I have friends in their 50s. They're like, I wake up creaky. My joints hurt. I hurt my shoulder, but it's just not healing. Like nothing heals as fast. 60s, 70s, joint pain, menopause, all the issues, brain fog, fatigue. And the thing is, what we're not acknowledging is this is inflammaging. It's not aging. It's inflammaging. So when my friends complain to me, I'm like, that's called inflammation. That's not aging. I have friends who I work out with at my gym. I can assure you they are stunning. They're fit. They're strong. They're healthy. They all lift heavier than I do. And they're in their 50s, 60s, and up. So I think when we are saying that, oh my gosh, like my brain fog and my fatigue and my stiffness and my aches and pains are all bothering me early on, we're not acknowledging that inflammation is the culprit. Inflammaging just means the fact that it's inflammation that's aging us far faster than we have to be aged. And if you think about it in the current diet culture, you think about it in relation to the current beauty culture and beauty standards, what does everyone want? Glowing, thick, healthy, luscious hair, beautiful skin that's anti-aging. It's not anti-aging, but staying youthful and vibrant. People want to stay healthy, fit, and vibrant, keep their 20-year-old bodies as we age into our 40s, 50s, and 60s. These are desires we have. But are we doing any of the work to achieve it in a way that's healthy and sustainable? I have so many questions for people. I'm like, have you considered that every itis in the body is inflammation? Gastritis, colitis, ulcerative colitis, arthritis, you name it. All the itises. So here we are, inflamed, chronic low-grade persistent inflammation. And we're running to every subspecialist doctor. They're saying you have something-itis. They're giving you an NSAID, an ibuprofen to cut down that inflammation, or they're giving you another tool. who's having the conversation of root causes of inflammation and healing the inflammation at the root cause? That's what we must do as society. We must take a big step back and say, why are we all inflamed? I'm not into politics, so I'm not going to get into politics, but why is our government doing the worst job on earth of keeping us healthy and safe in the United States? Why are Kraft and all these companies allowed to put poison in our foods, but forbidden from doing it for the Europeans? Drives me nuts. Europe has much better standards than we do for our food. So companies can run wild, companies can run rampant, they can poison us at all levels. Our water is so bad for us. Our air is so bad for us. So I'm investing in new air filter systems. I've invested in huge water systems for my home. I can't imagine poisoning my children from birth all the way till they're older. I'm not kicking off inflammation in their bodies from a young age if I have any control over it. So these are just some things to think about. And not to be a Debbie Downer about it all, but if we aren't vigilant about this battle that is waging in our bodies, then that war is going to win against us. We will have those diagnoses later that we don't want to hear. And with the family history I have growing up, watching my mom suffer with diabetes, watching all her brothers and sisters, and then watching the end game of my grandparents, to me, that's the worst thing that could happen. There's probably a lot of bad things that could happen in life, but the worst thing I can imagine is I end up at that door when I knew better. I have all the resources and tools and awareness and understanding not to end up diabetic, not to end up with heart attack, stroke, amputation, and all the things I saw my grandparents suffer from. So let's talk about some solutions. One easy solution, take turmeric. I did my PhD on turmeric. I do think it's the best thing since sliced bread. I think we should all be taking a baseline amount of turmeric to significantly reduce inflammation in our lives. I don't think the food version of turmeric is enough at all. We can sprinkle turmeric on our eggs and on our foods. Please, if you're going to consume turmeric, do it with black pepper or a healthy fat so you at least get the benefits. You at least absorb it. I don't think fresh turmeric has much benefit, but people are consuming it all day, juiced and in their protein shakes. That's fine. Again, black pepper, healthy fat. But if you want to significantly reduce inflammation, I believe you have to do it in supplement form and get that curcumin extract at a full 98% grade potency at a full 500 milligrams spread out twice in a day. That's my minimum. That's like my minimum investment in myself. Then my next thing after you have like great turmeric on board, or you can take great Ayurvedic ingredients for inflammation that work synergistically with turmeric, like ginger, boswellia, all these other amazing ingredients. After that first step, my second step is address gut dysbiosis. Most of us have gut dysbiosis. We either have leaky gut, or we have a bacterial overgrowth, or we have an imbalance in our gut. Any of us who have taken antibiotics or been in a high stress situation, we're going to have gut dysbiosis. It's going to happen. If we eat processed inflammatory foods and alcohol, will cause gut dysbiosis. So pretty much that's all of us. And there's ways to really address gut health powerfully. I think functional medicine are the best guides on that journey. I think investing in taking very high quality, potent medical grade probiotics can be very effective. When I work with my clients, I make sure that they are taking the product lines that I trust, where I've met those founders and CEOs. I know that they're in thousands of doctors' offices. I interview doctors and say, did this product work for you? Didn't? All right, let's try the next guy. Like, I need to know that on a stool test, you saw an effect from this company, because if you didn't see it in blood work or a stool test, why are we wasting our time and money? I want everyone on a very high quality D. We know the benefits of D, vitamin D. I don't even have to go into that one. Exercise and moving. It's so important. We underestimate it, but it's important for our inflammation. Doing detoxes. Ayurveda is a system of medicine from India. It's over 5,000 years old. We have a lot of protocols around detoxing, and I love to explain to people how to detox. Another thing is cut the inflammatory foods that are inflammatory to you. So for me, gluten is so inflammatory. Conventional dairy is, alcohol is, sugar is. And I don't consume meat. I was born vegetarian. So really looking at your diet and what's inflammatory to you can be key. And you might say, well, how do I know? Usually whatever causes you to be bloated or uncomfortable or in pain is inflammatory to you. And so one simple test you can run is take 30 days off that inflammatory food and then come back to it and let your body tell you if it can handle digesting that food or not. So those are just some quick tips around inflammation. There is a lot more that you can do for inflammation. In my Ayurveda program I created called Fusionary Method, I like to teach all the 6 pillars to help us build vibrant health and fight off inflammation. So that's fixing our sleep, fixing our diet, fixing how we eat, fixing our digestive fire within us. If we can learn how to ignite and manage that digestive fire, it can do most of the work for us. Taking the right herbs and spices, I call it mindful medicine chest, having a pharmacy at home, F-A-R-M, not P-H-A-R-M, for the pharmacy at home that we can have ready for us. So for example, my kiddo was sick today. I made him Hinkapani and was like, here you go, your stomach will be fixed. I don't need Pepto-Bismol. I don't need things from the drugstore. I have a pharmacy in my kitchen. It's called my spice cabinet. So really having those tools on hand help us prevent things from happening and also help us treat things in a way that's more natural. And I know so many people are interested in natural solutions now. And then lastly, I teach about how powerful nature is in healing us. Grounding in nature, breathing in nature. You know, we talk about it a lot, but do we build it into our schedule in a way that's meaningful so that our body can constantly stay detoxed and supported and healed on this journey? So I hope you enjoyed my episode today on inflammation. This is a topic that I absolutely love teaching about because I am the turmeric girl. I did my PhD on turmeric, and I do think turmeric is that #1 solution to build a foundation to reducing that inflammation. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast episode is hosted by Fusionary Formulas, my supplement company based on turmeric, creating the most potent turmeric in the world. And subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a comment. Let us know if you love this topic and other topics that you want to hear about. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to connecting to you on the next podcast we do. Thank you.